you look at something and it's a whole. All right, so the franchisee has a portfolio, that's their whole. Well, that's a part of a market. So then we look at Orlando. Okay, Orlando's a whole. Well, it's only one market in multiple markets where we operate with Tampa and Indianapolis. So, okay, that's the whole. Well, no, that's just the whole for the brand. We also have another brand. So then there's another whole, right? So this idea of stacked wholes. So we wanted to understand how could we provide the benefit of a shared service model at every level of whole.
The goal, it's to build a better franchise growth strategy. And today we're going to speak with Cody Pepper, CEO of Fast Fresh Brands. And guys, this is a conversation that's worth listening to. We're going to talk about the rule of three. We're going to talk about growth strategy. We're going to talk about KPIs and factors that you should be implementing right now as you evaluate how to grow your franchise system, how to create satisfied franchisees, multi-unit franchisees, and franchisees that are going to recommend your brand and validate. Coming up next. Cody, watching behind the scenes, it's been pretty incredible. In fact, we have one of our earlier podcasts together, and when we spoke, what I appreciated about Be Healthy Cafe entering the franchise space, and our conversation, not to my surprise, but it was such a pleasure, was focused on strategic planning and strategy and discipline, right? And so now, going forward, months and years forward, Be Healthy Cafe has become so much more. You're now leading Fast Fresh Brands, Be Healthy Cafe, Nature's Table, and really applying a unique growth strategy that I'd love to dive into and share with everyone during this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to talk with you again, Charles.
Yeah, I was super motivated. In fact, before we started, we're catching up, and I'm like, we need to hit the record button. I don't know if I'm going to have an outtake one too, because you also had to sit there as I recorded 3 intros, which was quite interesting. So let's talk, Cody, because from the start, you've been very methodical and disciplined, strategic planning. Just if you could give an overview, Fast Fresh Brands, where you're at, what's the strategy here?
Yeah. So thank you so much. It's been fun. So we spoke few years ago now. I don't remember how many, but several years ago, when we were first starting with Be Healthy Cafe. And the journey's been an interesting one. Where we sit today in our corporate headquarters for Fast Fresh Brands, which is a multi-brand portfolio, shared service operator for fast, casual, healthy concepts. We have Be Healthy Cafe as obviously one of our brands. And then recently we acquired Nature's Table, a 40 some odd unit chain out of Orlando, Florida. And so our approach is that we want to look for better for you brands like these healthy fast casuals that we believe we can provide some real shared service benefit to by consolidating the back end and some of the services that a franchise needs to operate by acquiring a brand, a similar brand, allowing it to continue operating under its name and its market, scaling it and growing it, but providing shared service consolidation or leveraging our scale to save money across the board. And so that's what we've started doing. We're excited about the growth in the space, the better for you food concepts. I think the food trend is going to continue going that direction. We're able to provide great value through differentiation and making food affordable on a daily basis, both financially, but also nutritionally affordable to you on a daily basis. So anyway, we're excited about the approach. We're excited about the market that we're participating in. So.
Cody, what I find fascinating, right? There's emerging franchisors out there, and they have the business that brought them into the franchise world, right? Whether it's a restaurant or retail or service. What's been your thought process? Because you've been growing Be Healthy brand systems. What's your thought process you apply to me with this multi-silo approach in terms of, frequently during our conversations, you're talking about shared services, both shared services at the platform level of franchise brands, but also you speak in terms of shared services at the operational level. And then just insights, you're not only focused on franchise sales, you're focused on corporate operations and acquisitions. Talk about that thought process of how you enter the franchise space and you're viewing this as part of your strategy and game plan.
Yeah. My approach is fairly simplistic. I kind of tend to break things down into threes. My general idea there is if I can't break it down into either three steps or three ideas, I either don't understand it well enough or it's too complicated. And and listeners will know that the franchising world and business in general is complicated enough on its own. It doesn't need help from us putting together a system or a structure that's complicated. So we've created a framework for moving forward that allows us to remain real disciplined in what we say yes and what we say no to, how we spend our money and how we spend our time. And we believe if we can execute in these three areas, that we'll be successful. And so, as any business 101 professor, my father was a business professor, so I kind of fall back on the academia definitions. But as any business professor would say, is that the primary objective of a business is to generate a satisfactory profit for its owners. It's the lifeblood. If it doesn't generate profit, it's either going out of business, it's a nonprofit or a government agency, and but it's not a business. So we have to make profit. So how do we make profit? Well, we make stuff and we sell stuff. So as a franchisor, what do? What do we make? We make a business model that generates profit for the franchisee. And we have to know that model and be able to operate it excellently, which is why we call it operational excellence, very well and better than anyone else can do. So we have to know that model. And then secondarily, we have to be able to market that thing. And that doesn't mean just advertise for it, but it's the big M of marketing. We have to be the best at marketing this business model. So what are the products, the prices, the places, the promotions that go into making something that people want to buy, finding that product market fit? And how do we drive that? So if that's our structure and that's the understanding of how a business operates, it makes profit by making stuff and selling stuff. Well, then what do we do inside to make that happen? Well, we do three things. One, we do things that drive top line up. Because if we can increase system-wide sales, both same-store year-over-year comps as well as system-wide sales, we're saying that your unit is improving every year, and we're saying that our company is improving every year and growing. So that gives a signal to the marketplace that it's growing, and it's validation that our products are selling at a greater clip. Right. So we want to see top line grow. And then as a franchisor, we get royalties off top line. So that's good. We like it. So that's step one. Step two is that the bottom lines have to be improving. So we have to be able to be putting downward pressure on our costs. So the big two, right, our prime costs, we got to make sure labor and inventory is continually in check and we're hitting those thresholds, that we're advising our franchisees as well as internally with our corporate stores that our occupancy costs aren't exceeding. So we're identifying our location strategy that matches what we believe our revenue will be. So our costs go down so that at the end of the day, we're a profitable model because our franchisees are buying into a concept with the expectation that they're going to make a satisfactory profit. It goes back to that core concept of what a business is. And so we have to be focused on, yes, top line sales, but only top line sales if bottom line results occur. Right? So top line sales have to improve, bottom line margins have to improve. And then the third thing we focus on is new unit growth, because as a franchisor, we want new units to open and to continue to grow. And that's going to give us value as a brand, but it's also going to provide value within the marketplace because it's going to give us brand saturation, penetration, top of mind awareness for the consumer. And that rising tide will lift up all of the stores. And so by opening up within the units, if we're profitable, franchisees reinvest back in, open up additional ones, they make more money. Thus, they recommend us to people or they open up more. Their validation calls are positive. And that's our process. It's three. It's very simple. We as a franchisor, as a company, only do things that take top line sales up, that improve the margin for the franchisee and encourage and inspire people to open up new units. And if it doesn't do one of those three things, we just say no to it. It's just not the business we're in. And so the reason when we came up with that framework of thinking about it, it made it pretty simple for us to think about a shared service. Because if what we can do is provide these expert services that franchisors need to be able to achieve those three outcomes or objectives, and we can do it for lower cost, then as a portfolio, we can increase top line, increase bottom line, and open up new brands. We can do those same three things for ourselves as well. And therefore, all of the interests of everybody participating, each brand, each franchisee, and our portfolio are aligned. We're never working across purpose. It keeps us in lockstep. And it's a really beautiful system. So then once we did that, or we applied that framework, we thought, how could we apply that at the lowest level? How do we apply the same shared service model? How do we leverage scale at the lowest level? There's a silly concept. It's not silly. I mean, it's silly to bring up, called whole-ons. And it's the idea that you look at something and it's a whole. All right. So the franchisee has a portfolio. That's their whole. Well, that's a part of a market. So then we'd look at Orlando. Okay, Orlando's a whole. Well, it's only one market in multiple markets where we operate. We have Tampa and Indianapolis. So, okay, that's the whole. Well, no, that's just the whole for the brand. We also have another brand. So then there's another whole, right? So this idea of stacked wholes. So we wanted to understand how could we provide the benefit of a shared service model at every level of whole, for down from the franchisee up through our parent company. And so the way we started looking at advising on our operational process or our model is how do you leverage scale at the lowest levels? That means how do you increase efficiency and decrease cost at every level by being a part of this entire system that we've put together. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're looking for, is unlocking new efficiencies, driving new benefits that are only possible because we're a part of a group, which we've started to unlock some pretty great benefits, implementing some good practices and seeing some really good results early on. Pretty happy.
Cody, because this is, I love the thought process. Just baselining a little here, just framework. How many locations are there right now? Be Healthy Cafe
15 at Be Healthy.
And Nature's Table. There's how many there?
43.
Okay. And of the Be Healthy, how many are corporate?
All of them.
Okay. So talk about, you enter the franchise space. I know you've been very selective on how you're growing Be Healthy Cafe.
Right.
And as you do this, you're applying a corporate growth model, acquisition, and now franchisee. Talk about how do you go about implementing it and putting in discipline and planning to say at least some KPIs and know that you're on the right track and you're going in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we actually didn't start with wanting to be fully corporate at Be Healthy. We started out saying, this is during COVID, and we said, oh God, we got a great business model. We're going to grow like this. And it was sort of the traditional in-cap drive-through model that a lot of our competitors and colleagues in the space are going after. And we thought, man, this is what we're going to scale. But just like every other company in the world experienced during COVID, every year felt like a totally different landscape. And so we just kept learning. And what we found over time was our approach really needs to be able to reduce our exposure to risk, during the next pandemic or during a weather event or during one of these multitude of external factors that impact business. And so what we started looking at was, what if we aren't in the selling these traditional spaces and that you're at odds with your landlord and competing against? That can be part of our strategy, but that isn't what we're selling. What if what we're selling is an opportunity for a portfolio of revenue to a franchisee? Now, we had a couple of individual franchisees in the system. So we started to talk to them about this shared management model. We call it pods, and that's a pooled operational design. And so by pooling your operations into a single centralized focus, what you're able to do is manage your resources, your time and your money, labor and cost of goods, much differently when you share it across a variety of outlets. And if what you think about is a single budget or a single P&L, and you think of your units as outlets rather than four-walled businesses, then you start thinking about the use of those resources differently. And you're able to more strategically deploy your resources to impact your bottom line. And so we talked with our franchisees who are in the system, and a couple of them just said, you know what, we love what's happening, but this was a secondary business for me. I'm not the owner operator of it, and I don't want to grow to 5 outlets or whatever, but I love what you're doing. Why don't we work together? Or, why don't you buy us back? And so we actually asked some of our franchisees if we could buy them back. And we did that in Oklahoma City. And we consolidated these pods and built them out so that we would have these strategic, geographically distributed pods working together to prove out the model. And when we stepped, it's kind of that whole on concept I talked about earlier. When we step back and say, look, we're not trying to just duplicate each unit, but we're trying to duplicate a very profitable business portfolio for our franchisees. That's what we're selling, because we want to work with multi-unit expanders and growth. We're not necessarily looking for onesie twosies. That is not our target franchisee. It's somebody who wants to own a portfolio, profitable portfolio funded by a better for you food concept. And so we want people who want to open up 3 to 5 outlets, or which would be a pod, or even 3 to 5 pods, and expand into a new market. So what we decided to do was to build out Oklahoma City, which if you know anything about our market, it's a tough market because it's so geographically dispersed. Density is very tough to find. We have less than 1,000 people per square mile. It's a very disparate place. And so we had to be pretty strategic because we knew if we could create a model worth replicating here, then we know that when we go to some other markets where there's tighter density, there's greater population, and perhaps even more favorability towards healthy food, we would be able to see, this is our thought, is that we would be able to see even greater scale, greater growth, greater results. And so what we're going to do is franchise this city model as we go into new markets. And so we're going to be owning our city and franchising as we enter new markets, and then applying that model in those places. And so that's really our growth strategy for Be Healthy. Was we are still a franchising concept. We're looking for great multi-unit operators who want to come in and own 3 to 5 units and or 3 to 5 pods. But what we aren't going to do is onesie twosies and just get, the idea of early stage franchisors or get really excited when somebody says, yeah, I want to become a franchisor. We almost get like honored that they've chosen us, that it kind of guides us into bad decisions around who we bring into our system, and maybe we aren't as judicious. We're really leaning on the experience of our board that we've put together, who are the executives of some of the most iconic brands in America, who help us understand the playbook and really do add a level of confidence to what our approach is. And it's been pretty great. So that's sort of our approach, and a little bit about the folks who are helping advise us in this effort.
Well, I love the focus on corporate franchisees and the acquisitions as you go forward. Cody, as you're reflecting and you're sharing a lot of discipline in terms of thought process and planning. If we put it together in terms of franchisee conversations, multi-unit franchisees have a conversation with you about fast, fresh brands. What are the differentiators, the objective differentiators that you believe are relevant and ready to articulate when you're having those conversations
With
with a
others who,
prospective franchisee?
Mhm. Yeah. So one of the conversations is there's no cross interests. The way that we do business is that we focus all of our alignment around the profitability at the unit level. So our gold standard is unit level confidence. Internally, everybody in our company knows unit level confidence is our metric, our standard for success. And the way that we measure, we develop some KPIs around that, or we select some KPIs that really indicate to us that unit level confidence is being achieved, is felt. But it's a factor of a couple of things. Bottom line is, are they making the amount of profit that they believe is a good return on their investment, and that would encourage and inspire them to want to open another unit and or recommend us to a friend by putting their own reputation on the line. And if that's not happening, we don't have confidence, right? And so when I'm speaking with a prospective franchisee, the first thing I want them to understand is that our intention is the success of each franchisee, and all of the efforts that we participate in, all the fees that we charge as a franchisor, which we're very upfront about, are aligned with services provided that have a disproportionate impact at the unit level. Franchising is funny. There's some idea out there that people say, oh yeah, you franchise because you benefit when the franchisee loses. You get it off this top line, and or you get money when we don't get money. And so we work to kind of smooth out those edges, and we show our work. We're going to charge this fee, and for this fee, this is what we're doing. We partnered with an incredible marketing firm to develop a very important new marketing approach, a digital strategy that we're rolling out and laying over both brands, that we're able to do because we have this shared service, and we're able to distribute the cost across a couple of brands. So neither of them have to shoulder the fixed costs that go with it wholly, which is a really beautiful thing. And so the brand fee that comes in, our franchisees, we have this test market. We can just show, hey, look, we did this. And with your 1% brand fee, what you're getting out of it is X% increase. So the return for you is 5-fold, 10-fold, or whatever it may be. And that's how we do business. That's how we communicate. So early on with franchisees, we just help them see that we're their partner in this. We're not another vendor that's going to send them a bill each week or each month, that we're their business partner. And the only two things that we care about is operational excellence, which means that you profit and that your profit grows, and that the system grows. New units opening and system-wide sales grow. And if that happens, there's harmony. And so by demonstrating that, sharing that, and allowing them to discuss with existing franchisees in our system who feel that we don't do a lot of convincing. We kind of just do educating, sharing, and then giving an opportunity for them to discover.
Cody, as you experience the franchise world, and now grow in a very substantial way. And where do you think, where do you feel new franchisors may be making missteps or getting off track?
I don't know about new franchisors, but I'll speak for myself from my own experience where I have found myself getting off track. And, so maybe that's an indication. When you are building something, and there's a certain threshold as a franchisor where you're spending more than you're making because you have to have the infrastructure just ahead of the money coming in, and there's a point where you pass through of how many units have to be sold and generating royalty for you to then be profitable as a franchisor, and so you got to hit that runway. At the early stage, you're operating out of a position of fear, and so it's a survival tactic, and so you make decisions that allow you to survive today or tomorrow, but what you're not doing is making decisions that allow your system to thrive in 3 and 5 years. And I don't know if it's necessary or not necessary, so not a value statement, but it simply is that you're making decisions from a different stance, from a different position or mindset. And it's real easy to get off your plan or out of your framework because you believe you're making a decision that you have to make as opposed to one that you need to make. So it's different. And so you've said it a couple times, but we really do pride ourselves on discipline, on not getting bored with the plan, not getting bored with the approach, not switching to something new because it's flashy or we think it's going to generate some kind of a quick pop or something like that. Business isn't sexy, and it doesn't need to be. We have a plan that we stick with and we don't switch. Perfect example is a marketer. You market something, takes 7 times for the message to hit for somebody to recognize it and take action. So typically the person, the owner operator or the small company, they're promoting, they change their message so frequently because they're the ones getting bored with the message. They feel like they've said the same thing for a month. But the person who gets sick of it first is the marketer, not the recipient, right? And so we just try to have a longer view. We try to be data driven, and we try to be less responsive to anecdotes and take that anecdote, look at the data, and then understand what trends or what themes are emerging. And we make decisions based on trends and based on system-wide themes, as opposed to flare-ups. So we're not firefighters on a daily basis. And I think that early stage franchisors, you just don't have that scale or that experience. So you sometimes maybe react a little bit more quickly to the flare-ups.
I think there's a resurgence in retail stores and restaurants, with the caveat that there's some specialization, right? There's a really refined focus. What do you see as the opportunities ahead in the restaurant industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been thinking about this a whole lot. If you sort of take the old convention that you can either be a low cost provider or a differentiated provider, high quality. So you take the Walmart and the Target, right? I think there's an opportunity for a third path there. The expectation is you're differentiated. Now, people want an experience. If they're going to go somewhere, a destination, as opposed to having it conveniently delivered through DoorDash, Uber Eats, or Amazon, they want there to be a reason they went there. They want it to be a value add to their life, whether it's a cute aesthetic, whether it's a great interpersonal experience, whatever it be. So the differentiation is a must. It's a cost of entry, but now a value differentiation is really what the expectation is. Our economy is a little uncertain right now. I don't know if you've noticed, there's some rising costs and there's some fear in the marketplace, and we're seeing it hit our retirement accounts. We're seeing the stock market respond weirdly. We're seeing eggs cost more than they've cost in a while. Just people are nervous. And so what we don't want to see happen is that all of a sudden these differentiated players start cutting their quality and drop to a low cost just to meet the menu pricing that's needed. But you got to find a way to do both. You've got to find a way to provide a value that is equal to or greater than the price you're charging. And that's how you're going to do it with the differentiation. So the thing that we're focused on is doubling down on the human. Be healthy, and we call it the Be Happy experience. Nature's Table, we have a very similar concept, but it doesn't lend itself to saying be because it's not a cute illustration there, but we still call it that. But the idea is we double and triple down on the guest experience when they come in. Every product we launch starts with how's this going to make the guests' lives better, and it ends there. And in the middle, we say, and can it be profitable? And is it innovative? Does it further our innovation? And does it differentiate us in the marketplace? Is it something they can get from us differently or better than they can get anywhere else? And can they afford it? is it profitable and can they afford it, right? So that's the position we're looking at. In our first interview years ago, I'm not sure if I mentioned this concept, but we called it an intentional 7. We still apply that, and I think that's kind of proving out to be very accurate. And the idea is, the old adage is, you can be fast, you can be good, or you can be cheap. Pick 2, right? So, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, you can pick 2 of them. So that means I've got 20 to select from. So if I'm a 7 at all of them, I can be 210, and I believe in putting in an extra 10%, sure, right? So I can be pretty fast. I can be faster than my competitors. I can be better than my competitors, and I can be cheaper than my competitors. And so if I'm an intentional 7 across the board, it gives me a unique place to play. I'm not the cheapest, but I'm also not going to be that fine dining experience. And so if we think about how are we an intentional 7, how can you afford us every day, and how can you enjoy us every day? And we think about ourselves as 5 days a week food instead of just occasion food. Now it gives us a unique place to play. And that changes and informs where we compete, what locations we go into, where our competitors can't. Because if we're competing for real estate, it's because we need people who only come once or twice a week most, because we need 20,000 cars driving by us to get there. Well, that's high cost real estate. But if somebody needs us every day and then they go splurge for a steak once a week, but we're the 5 days a week place, then it's a different location. And now we're an amenity, right? We're in alignment with our real estate vendor as well. So we've tried to cut out this cross purpose at every stage of our business. From our vendors we work with, we want them to be aligned. We don't want them to benefit when we lose. So how do we align our interests with every vendor we work with, from our landlords to our mainline suppliers to our franchisees to everything? So it's a little bit about how we're approaching it, where we see the opportunity.
Cody, I love the analysis. There's so many people, and this is where I even worry myself as a business, right? I'm very, I view our culture and team as like the critical asset and resource. But there's so many businesses that claim to be doing this or claim to be focused on this, but they're not hitting the mark, and they're not aware they're missing the mark, right? That's something that keeps me up at night, right? It's the if a client's unhappy and I don't hear about it, or I'm making assumptions about culture and purpose and deliverables, and I'm overestimating the value. Like, how do you create that objective internal guide to at least indicate you're on the right track or wrong track, or if there's a warning sign?
Yeah, so we have a set of KPIs that we look at inside of our business. We do weekly business reviews every Friday. We just stole what Amazon was doing, because why not? They're doing it great, and they do a business review every Friday, and we do the same thing, where we do an analysis of, did we hit the metrics we set out to hit? Are we positive in what buckets? Are we negative in what buckets? What are the tactics that went into, or the inputs that went into producing those outputs? And what can we do about it immediately? What can we shift or change next week? The one thing we can tweak to improve an underperforming category or continue to hit our desirable outcomes. And we do that every week with both brands. We start every week with a stand-up where we align everybody around. Again, it's about shifting people out of their reactionary space and start getting people a little bit more mindful about what they're doing. So every Monday morning, our entire company, all of our corporate team comes together. If you're virtual, we come in on a Zoom, and we sit down there and we say, hey guys, okay, what are we going to do this week? What are we going to accomplish? And what I don't want to hear is, what are the things you're going to do on your to-do list? We're all busy. We all have a lot of things. You're not going to impress anybody by listing off 10 things you're doing. But what are the outcomes of the week? What are you going to achieve as a result? If this week was successful, what will have happened? And you have to state that intention publicly on a Monday morning. And so it could be an example of, I'm going to secure 3 LOIs. I've got 3 things in the process. I'm going to get this signed. I'm going to get a successful soft opening at this location, whatever it may be. So we have a framework, or what I call it's a routine that we've established to be able to support an understanding. So I'm kind of working backwards. The low level is the routine. Then the next level up is the framework. So what is the framework that we operate within? Well, I've kind of described it. It's actually 2 of our board members, Cliff Hudson and Craig Miller, just wrote a book on this. But this is the reason I use the framework, is because they've been coaching me on it for years. It's called Cupid. So it's in Bricks and Clicks. It's a new book on Amazon. Check it out. It's pretty good. In that framework, it's about customer-centric. Number 1, everything has to be about, how does this impact the customer? How does it make the customer's life better? Profitability, so CU, customer experience, right? Then P, profitability, I, innovation, and D, differentiation, Cupid. And so If that's our framework of how we look at everything we do, from marketing to operations, if we apply that framework, then it gives us a step process of thinking about things so that we don't have to miss core things that we think are core to the output of our business. And if then we operate on a philosophy. And if our philosophy is that unit level confidence will drive business success, because unit level confidence means that top lines are growing, bottom lines are improving, and new stores are getting opened, then we have to measure those three outcomes. And so the fourth element is sentiment. Well, we look at net promoter score. If you're not opening a store, but would you tell somebody based on your reputation that they should open a store? And is our net promoter score from our customer good and from our franchisee good? So we do a lot of surveys, and they're short, but I send them out. In fact, I just got back results from a survey that we completed. We're presenting in our next board meeting, because the premise is that a business isn't, or a brand isn't what you say it is. The brand is what your customer says you are. And so we want to understand, what is it that our customers are saying about us, and what is it that our employees are saying about us, and what is it that our franchisees are saying about us. And we look at it. We don't have a lot of ego, right? You can be right or you can be rich. And if I'm out there telling everybody that what I'm doing is right, then I'm not listening to the areas that I could improve. I'm not looking for those signals. And so we try to check ego at the door, and we try to understand that if we're going to be rich, and I don't just mean financially, but I mean emotionally, with friends, with community, and with success, and building businesses with our franchise partners, then we have to have a bit dose of humility, and that goes into our core values of humility. And so we look for the data. So we get it internally through our internal guest feedback. We look publicly. What are people saying about us in the marketplace? How do we stack up against the brands that we view are doing a good job? So what's our Google reviews, our Yelp reviews? We want to see that public, speak. Our internals, are we hitting our metrics there? And then our surveys, when we do a direct survey, and then when we do our secret shopper program. So we have 3 or 4 ways of getting information back about ourselves to have a very clear look at ourselves. And so if we're hitting our KPIs, if our top line sales are growing at a clip that we like, if our bottom line profitability is being felt and experienced by franchisees at the clip that we like, and if new units are opening at a clip that we like, and all of the internal feedback coming in is saying they also like what we're saying and like what we're seeing, and our quality assurance checks are in place and those are reflecting good, well, now it's telling a story. And now we can say, okay, it feels like we're on track here because we're making the money we want to be making. People are making what they want to be making. And the sentiment is good. Confidence is high. And so that's really what we look at, is understanding what is the story we're trying to tell, and what is the philosophy. And then how do we measure if the philosophy is being achieved?
Cody, how often are you conducting surveys?
So every single customer interaction gets a request for survey. So we get on a daily basis, every interaction gets a request internally. I do a quarterly survey, a pulse check with our franchisees, and it's not on necessarily a system thing, but it might be on a theme based on something we're about to roll out or that we have just rolled out. So we acquired Nature's Table at the beginning of the year. So we sent out a pulse check 30 days in about what they would like to see, where their concerns are about the business and the direction. And then we just did one again at 120 days in. So quarterly. And then I do quarterly employee surveys where we send out, and just, once a year we do a really big one. And then quarterly we send out kind of pulse checks. Do you like the communication? Do you feel supported in your role? Do you like the direction of your career? Those sort of things. Do you feel like our company's providing value? Those sort of pieces. I'm a big survey person. I like data.
It's I'm embarrassed. Not really embarrassed, but we've never implemented a survey, and it's something that I don't know if it, something I think about all the time, and it's on one of our attraction lists. And I mean, everything you're putting together and this is just, a course in terms of strategic planning. I think it's critical. And for franchisors out there, I think the discipline of sending surveys to your franchisees is so critical, because my concern is when a franchisor experiences turbulence, it comes to them as a surprise.
Yep.
And, it's like everything was fine, and why am I experiencing this instability? And like any other business, whether it's mine or shame on me if I haven't sent out surveys, that's just a small step along the way to look for those indicators and red flags. And I think it's such critical advice. And not only the sending the survey, but the discipline that you're applying to it, right? So for franchisors out there that haven't implemented this type of process, on day one, if you were going to implement a survey, what would you be focused on in terms of like the survey interaction?
I would just send out the first survey that says, we value this partnership and we want to be the best in service in pursuit of our mutual goals. So we're going to be conducting a series of surveys over the coming months and years. But to start, we just want to hear, how are we doing currently and how could we do better? And so a 3 to 5 question survey, it doesn't need to be intense. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about your business? How are you feeling about our communication? How do you feel about the support we're providing? And you can use a Likert scale or whatever kind of a scale. You can just go to SurveyMonkey and just do an AI automated one, have it generated, because some data is good and it'll give you direction and information. And as you do one, you'll get more sophisticated by, you'll Google, oh, how do I put together a better survey? And then eventually you'll make enough money, you'll hire a survey company. But just start, because the signal that sends to your franchisees is that you're showing up and listening. Step 1. Step 2, you're using the data to make decisions. And step 3, you're reporting back to them about the results of the survey. You can just say the themes. You don't have to give them the actual results. And you want to make everything's anonymous. Got to be anonymous, right? So people, even if they are, won't believe that they are, but just make them anonymous. And then they have to see that you did something as a result, that their feedback actually impacted their felt experience, right? So it's really important that that people just do that. They get out there and they make it happen. One thing I failed to mention, we prioritize data in this way, but it's a full-time job, looking at data. And you said something I think is really, really important, and I didn't want to gloss over, which is when turbulence arises for a franchisee, it often comes as a shock to the franchisee because they didn't understand what the warning signs were. They didn't know that X and Y would lead to Z. They didn't know that. And why didn't they know that? Because they aren't the expert in the model. And so if you go back to our first part of our conversation, we're the experts in 2 things: operational excellence, that means making money with a model, and then marketing this brand to drive top line sales. So marketing drives top line, operations support drives bottom line, and that's the harmony. And when that happens, it's good. The problem is if you don't apply the check to it, the final phase of a manager's obligation, which is evaluation, if you don't do that, it's a dereliction of duty, which means that you've got to be evaluating the performance of your franchisees and auditing it in a way that isn't punitive, but is in support. And what I mean by that is if you don't have data transparency and you aren't looking at key indicators, key performance indicators that are also I'm big into environmental conservation, used to work with an environmental group, and we used to use the thing called indicator species. Like I live on the prairie here in Oklahoma and Kansas, and prairie chicken is an indicator species because it needs the 3 levels of grass to be a healthy ecosystem. So if there's a healthy population of prairie chicken, you can indicate that the prairie might be a healthy ecosystem. So what are our prairie chickens for our business? So we've identified the prairie chickens. And so if I look at your numbers that you're reporting to me weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, I should be able to, with a desk audit, tell you if I think something's not right, i.e. your revenue generation is off because your revenue streams aren't balanced. Your day parts are off, which might lead to higher labor costs. Your labor costs are off because you're not running our labor model. Your cost of goods are off, meaning that you're not pushing or selling or promoting a certain product that has a better food cost, or perhaps you're not ringing up catering, and we're recognizing that there might be some sketchy reporting practices, which also could be an indicator of low profitability, which has a bigger factor to it. So again, if we're not looking for that data ahead of time and then reaching out to a franchisee saying, I'm noticing something feels a little off here, let's talk about it. I don't want, what can happen is XYZ if this goes untreated. And you got to have that relationship with the franchisee up front. And the only way you can do it is that they don't think that the police are showing up, but they think their partner's showing up to help them. You're a doctor, not a cop, right? And that's this idea of diagnosis and prescription, right? Diagnose and prescribe, so we hired, or internally we had a great employee, we promoted him to director of data and technology. And his only job is to aggregate the data so we have transparency of data in all of our areas and be looking for areas of improved efficiency and challenge that we can address with our ops team. Right? And so that's what we're doing internally. And that's what a shared service or leveraging scale can do, because a small emerging franchisor may not have resources for somebody to be doing that full time. So part of a reason that you may want to join a shameless plug, become a franchisee of Be Healthy or Nature's Table, because it does have Fast Fresh brands behind it and supporting it to be able to provide these kind of services across both brands.
Cody, you can't fake this. I'm inspired by this conversation, and I'm a little down on myself during this conversation
I
because
hope not.
um, I appreciate the discipline and focus that you've been, and I love watching and being a very, very small part of this journey. Thinking ahead a little, and as we wrap up, what's coming up next for Fast Fresh Brands in terms of what I think is earned and deserved, but what are those good fit franchisee partners that you're focused on and you believe you could add value to?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And first off, you said that you're a small part of this. And Charles, I'm gonna tell you from the day we spoke, I was walking back and forth in my driveway, interviewing you, you interviewing me to see if we'd be a good fit to come together. And that conversation was so powerful for me because what it did was it told me what a healthy and supportive, mutually beneficial relationship would feel like in the franchise space. And I mean that. And your entire team has been incredible to deal with. And I know I give Brian fits and starts. I always have got an idea. Whoa, okay, how are we going to do this? And God, it's a fun conversation every time. So anyway, you're doing a great. I really love your team over there,
Appreciate it.
and we view you as highly valuable partners. We really do. So if you're watching this, wondering which law firm to choose, um, okay. So, and I mean that. So what's up next? Well, this won't come as a surprise. We think about our growth path in 3 steps. So the way that we're looking at it is we want to grow in existing markets with existing franchisees. That aligns with our primary philosophy of improving unit level confidence. We believe that if our franchisees are choosing to grow with us, that means that's an indication that our system is doing well for them, that they're confident in the return on investment, they're happy with the support, they see the future. So we are focused exclusively at Be Healthy Cafe and Nature's Table for the first 9 months post acquisition. So that's the first 3 quarters of 2025 on doing internal growth in our existing markets, Orlando, Tampa, Indianapolis. We've got a unit in central Alabama and northeast Alabama and central Georgia as well. But we're really focused on growing in the markets where we currently are with existing franchisees. So they have a right of first refusal on territory to apply this shared service model that we've been developing for the last several years and proving out it Be Healthy. And building out Oklahoma City so that we have market penetration. We really want top of mind awareness around our brand so everybody knows who we are. We want to be a household name here. It's a service we have to provide. So our first 9 months is all about that. And we can't open new units if confidence is low. So we have to take the steps to grow confidence, which means they have to start seeing that comp store sales are going up because of this incredible innovation that we're able to bring, this incredible marketing plan we're bringing. They have to see that their bottom line's improving, their take-home pay is growing as an owner because our operational excellence program and the support we're able to provide allow them to save 1 or 2 points on labor, 1 or 2 points on cost of goods, replicating or reducing duplicate expenses by managing slightly differently. So that's what we're doing in the first 9 months. And we're already starting to see some early commitments to growth. We're getting some commitments of people who want to start expanding and growing early with us. That's step one. Step two then is we want to grow within these markets with new franchisees. Once everyone's gotten a chance to say, hey, this is really what I'd like to do over the next 1, 2, maybe 3 years in growth in my development plan, then we'll understand where the opportunities of market availability are within Orlando, Tampa, Indy, Oklahoma City, and then a couple of primary markets we're looking to Be Healthy into. And so then we'll bring new franchisees in. And the ones that we're looking to bring in are not the ones who say, I want to buy myself a job with this franchise. That's a very good business model. It's not what we're doing. It starts there, but we want you to open a store, be in there and learn everything about it for the first year and hit our threshold of metric, and then start to open multiple units. And we want to elevate you out of being in your business to start working on the business, as it says, right? So that's the next phase is how can we bring in some strategic franchisees who have multi-growth objectives and put them into our markets so that we can increase density where we play today. And then the third phase of it is to bring in strategic partnership through franchisees, even corporate growth to seed new markets in new primary and secondary markets where we want to operate. That would allow us to support that our supply chain can lead, that we can bring into, and that makes sense for where we're building out in a region. And so that's our third phase plan. So we're right now in the process of developing our 3 to 5 year growth plan for both markets, but that's the philosophy we're following. So right now we're all in on current franchisee growth, existing franchisee and existing corporate growth.
Yeah, That's smart. I mean, it's disciplined and smart. And every time, whether it's at an exit event where a client system gets over 200 units and it achieves a very big acquisition or just continues to grow, one of the strongest signals we see is multi-unit franchisee operators. And the fact that this has been a primary focus of yours from the start, um, I think it gets to the core of your DNA and everything that Fast Fresh Brands is doing. Cody, I'm always blown away by the conversations. I appreciate the time today. I really appreciate the conversation.
It's always a joy to talk with you, Charles. Thanks again for all the support from you and your team over there. We're growing because we got great people working with like you, and I enjoy talking about this stuff probably too much. I ramble a little bit, so sorry about that.
No,
But
no, no,
this has been
Cody,
fun.
this is inspiring, right? This is like a video where I don't know if they listen to me, but when I get home, I'm gonna recommend my younger son watch it, right?
Awesome.
Cody, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.